these topics. So this will be the last day of notes before your test, and the topic is going to be solving absolute value inequalities. And this will be the last day of notes before the test, so you want to make sure that you caught all your notes in your notebook, caught up with all 13 days of notes. Okay, so we're going to start by creating a chart that's obviously about absolute values involving inequalities. So the notes that we're going to write on there are the inequality, the absolute value of x is less than a, and then remember, when a is bigger than 0, which means it's non-negative, asks us this question: what values of x have an absolute value less than a? Okay, so that's what it's asking. The solution are numbers between negative a and a. Okay, so that's the solutions. It's not going to be both, it's going to be the numbers in between, which again is going to teach you a little bit about those compound inequalities, right? So we would, for example, we might see it like this. The absolute value of x is less than 5. Well, we already know that that's going to mean that it's between negative 5 and positive 5. Or you may write that x is greater than negative 5 and x is less than positive 5. Okay, and we just learned that on the graph that would look something like this. We'd have 5 over here, negative 5 here, and 5 over here. Again, the smallers are on the left, the biggers are on the right. We have open circles, okay, and they're going to be connected because they're and, right? So that's what your graphs would look like. Algebraically, we would say if we have the absolute value of x is less than a, then negative a is less than x is less than a. The negative x is less than x, and x is less than a, right? Okay. And or you could have written it x is greater than negative a and x is smaller than positive a. And then in your graph, it would be something like this, where here's 0, here's negative a, here is positive a. Open circles at each of those. They'd be connected, where on this side we have a units from 0, and this side is also a units from 0. Okay? And the same properties apply to, the same properties apply to less than or equal to. So let's make sure that you know that this is, let's put it right here on the side, less than and less than or equal to. Okay, so we're going to have different types for greater than and greater than or equal to. So if you notice, these are the and cases. Okay, so big surprise, you're probably going to be doing or cases for greater than. Okay, so these are going to be your and cases. Let's do an example. I'm going to flip the page. Go ahead and pause if you need to. Okay, so another example, again, continuing on number 13. An example could be x plus 3 is less than 12. Remember, the first thing we need to do is we're going to isolate the absolute value. We want to do that before we graph, or before we split or whatever. Okay, so now we have subtract 3 from both sides, and now we get the absolute value of x is less than 9. Okay, now we know that we are going to have x is greater than negative 9 and x that is less than positive 9. So when we put it on the graph, we're going to have these two here, negative 9 and 9, both open circles, and we're going to move them together. Remember, less than graphs as and. Okay, less than is going to graph as and, an and situation in a compound inequality. Okay, so what if we have something that has more than that inside? So we have x plus 4 is less than or equal to 2. Okay, so we have an isolated absolute value. So now you're going to break it into 2. So we're going to split it just like we would split it when we had absolute values. You're going to split it into 2 cases. So you're going to split it into the following cases. We're going to get x plus 4, which is less than 2. And the second case will be x plus 4, which is less than or equal to negative 2. Oops, hold on. X plus 4, that is, yep, and then this one is, oops, sorry. This would be greater than negative 2. Okay, you gotta follow the pattern. So the it's greater than the negative number. So we're gonna say greater than or equal to the negative number here. Okay, so we're gonna add 4 to both sides. X is less than or equal to 6 over here. We're gonna add 4 to, oops, what is wrong with me? Sorry guys. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. And that's subtract over there too. Oh. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. And this is going to leave us with a negative 2. So this is going to leave us with x is less than or equal to negative 2. If we subtract 4 from both sides, we're going to get x is greater than or equal to negative 6 over here. Okay, so then when we graph, we're going to have a graph with negative 2 and, oops, sorry, 6 and negative 2. They're both going to be closed circle. We know this is an and situation. We know this is an and situation. So we know that we are going to connect them. Okay? So it seems a little complex. Let's go ahead and try one more, so maybe that would be helpful for everyone. Okay, for our third one, let's do 2 times x is less than or equal to 6. So we're going to isolate the variables by dividing both sides by 2. We're going to get the absolute value of x is less than or equal to 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So then we're going to have it split. We're going to have x is less than or equal to 3, and x is greater than or equal to negative 3. Okay, it's always greater than the negative. So we could write that over here too. Always greater than the negative side when splitting. Okay, so when we split it to solve, we're going to always put the greater than sign on the negative one. Okay, so then we have negative 3 and 3. They're both closed circle. And we're going to connect them because we know this is an and situation because this is less than. And remember, we put up here, less than graphs are and situations. Okay, so then I'm going to turn the page again. Stop if you need to have more time. And we're going to talk about what happens when we have greater than or less, or greater than or equal to. Okay, so this is going to be, again, item number 13 out in the corner. But this is going to be ones that are greater than or equal to. Okay, so the inequality, the absolute value of x is greater than a when a is greater than 0. So it still has to be a non-negative number. Asks us the question, what values of x have an absolute value that is greater than a. Okay, and the solutions are numbers less than negative a, or, which is probably important there to you, greater than a. Okay, so for example, we have the absolute value of x is greater than 5. It is going to look like this. It's either going to be x is less than negative 5 or x is greater than positive 5. Okay, so you notice here, like we talked about before, when we have a greater than situation, when starting with greater than, it graphs as or, and when we split, the negative gets the less than sign. Okay, so when we starting with the greater than, it graphs as an or, and when we split it to solve it, like we did here, the negative number gets the less than sign. The positive number continues to keep its greater than sign. Okay? And when we graph it, then we're going to have negative 5 open circle this way and positive 5 open circle that way. This is an or situation. Okay? Let's look at some examples. Oh, sorry. Let's do algebraically first. Algebra will say if x is greater than a, then x is less than negative a, which we just said, or x is greater than positive a. And same kind of graph where we have negative a who goes this way, and here's 0, and we have positive a that goes that way. Okay, and then in between here, this is a units away from 0 on this side, and a units away from 0 on this side. Okay, it's kind of complex and a little bit tricky, but let's make sure that we are sure that we understand it by looking at some examples. Okay, so our first example would be, let's just have the absolute value of x minus 20 is greater than negative 13. Well, we know that that's greater than, so obviously I'm going to know that. Let's just make sure we remember that this is an or situation. That'll help me remember to graph that, okay? We have to isolate that first, so let's add 20 to both sides. And we're going to have the absolute value of x is greater than 7. Okay, and then when we split, remember what we talked about up here, the less than is going to get the negative. So is the x is less than the negative 7, okay, because we have an or situation, and x is greater than positive 7. So then when we graph it, they're going to have negative 7 here and positive 7 here, open circles because they're not equal to, and it's an or situation, so they're going to go opposites. Okay? Let's try and do another one. I'm going to have to flip the page, so go ahead and stop if you need to, otherwise continue with me. Okay, so for number 2, we're going to see we have the absolute value of x minus 8 plus 5 is greater than or equal to, so we know it's going to be an or situation. Again, this is 13, 11. So we're going to isolate first. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. We're going to get the absolute value of x minus 8 is greater than or equal to 6. Okay, because it's or, we know we're going to split it, and we're going to do with the positive. So we have x minus 8 is greater than or equal to 6, and the negative is going to get the less than. X minus 8 is less than or equal to negative 6. So let's go ahead and solve for both, giving us x is greater than or equal to 14. And we're going to add 8 to both sides, giving us x is less than or equal to 2. We're going to graph, put the 2 over here and the 14 over here, close circles because they're both equal to, and they're going to go in opposite directions. Okay? It feels a lot complex, but I think you guys can do it. Okay, let's do one last one for this section so you get the idea of what we're doing. Let's go ahead and do x plus 2.5 plus 0.5 is less than or equal to 4. So I'm going to subtract 0.5 from both sides first so I can isolate. So we get x plus 2.5. Absolute value is greater than, so that's an or situation, or equal to, now we have 3.5. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and split. We'd have x plus 2.5 is greater than or equal to 3.5. And then we're going to have x plus 2.5 because, is less than or equal to 3.5, negative 3.5. Remember, when we have an or situation, when the less than gets the negative sign. So we're subtracting 2.5 from both sides on this one. And we're going to get x is greater than or equal to 1. We're going to subtract 2.5 on this side, and that is going to get us x is less than or equal to negative 6. Okay, when we put this on the graph, we're going to have negative 6 over here, 1 over here. They're both colored in because they both have the equal sign, and it's an or situation, so they're going to go in opposite directions. Okay? I think you guys can do that. You just have to remember the rules about splitting. Okay, basically, the way it is stays that way, and then the other way goes the other way, right? Let's go with that. So the last part of this will be special cases. Okay, and special cases again are going to be similar to what they were with the absolute values before. So let's look at some special cases. We have the absolute value of x minus 6 plus 7 is greater than 2. First of all, it's greater than, so we know it's going to be an or situation, right? Okay, so let's see. We subtract 7 from both sides. We get x minus 6 absolute value is greater than 5. So far, so good. If we have x minus 6, well, let's go ahead and... Okay, this is a negative 5, right? Well, it can't be... Okay, so absolute values are always going to be non-negative, right? This is always going to be a non-negative. If this is going to be greater than a non-negative, it's always going to be this is always going to be a positive number. This one says that it's greater than a negative number, it's always going to be true, so this is all reals. Okay, and then we have this different case where we have the absolute value of x plus 12 minus 5 is less than or equal to negative 6. Well, that's less than, so we know that's an and situation first of all, right? So we'll mark that. Okay, then we subtract 5, add 5 to both sides. We get x plus 12 is less than or equal to negative 1. Well, no matter what I do, this is a positive. It can't be less than or equal to a negative 1, right? Because it's always going to be positive, and anything less than a negative 1 is always going to be a negative. So there's no way that can be true, so this is no solution. Okay? So I think that's pretty much going to do it. If you have questions, please ask. You know, this is a little bit complicated, but I think you're pretty capable of doing it. We're going to look at your homework. I think it is 1 through 10 today. Yeah, we're going to do homework 3.7, 1 through 10. There you go, 3.7, 1 through 10.